Hey everyone, welcome to Zon and Canada. Joining me again this time around is Randy. He is a longtime friend of the show and one of the organizers behind Icon, which is the anime convention in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Randy, thanks for joining me again.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So last year, Randy was actually on our holiday episode in 2016, and we did a segment where we talked about all the theatrical releases for anime movies that we had in Canada over that year. And we basically had, I think, pretty much an episode's worth of content in that segment alone. It kind of went on, and I figured that this year what we do is we could do the same thing and actually just have a whole episode focused on it. And Randy has played a role in getting theatrical releases rolling in his neck of the woods in the past as well, and I know you've been fairly involved in that, and you do tend to catch most of the theatrical releases that happen. So you tend to have quite a bit to say on the subject.
I do, yes,
yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I know that in 2016 you it was Miss Hokusai specifically. You reached out with
yes.
With was it 11 Arts, and you kind of got a screening rolling.
It was G Kids.
G
Kids
okay.
directly.
Yeah, that was great, because I know Winnipeg, Manitoba, it's sort of not always a priority for these theatrical releases. Or the way I see it, at least, you have, the tier 1 priority area is always Ontario, and then lower down on the scale, like a tier 2, you have Quebec and BC and Alberta, and then Winnipeg or Manitoba in general seems to be kind of a tier 3. It can be kind of hit or miss, but it's been a little more consistent in that neck of the woods from what I've gathered lately.
Yeah, it really has. There's been we had a lot of effort to get like Azaland and 11 Arts to notice us more, and so far it seems to be pretty successful. They seem to be marketing to us a bit more, which is good. I was actually looking at the theater news, and there's only like a few that were countrywide that didn't hit Winnipeg. The only one I really saw was Blade of the Immortal didn't hit us.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
Besides that, everything else that was Canada-wide pretty much hit us this year, which was really good.
Yeah, Blade of the Immortal live action, we did get that here in Vancouver. I actually missed out on that one. But the coverage seems to be improving for a lot of movies quite a bit. I do have issues with a few releases which I think were kind of botched to an extent, and we'll get to that when we get to that. Yeah, we'll try to go through this more or less in order of what we saw released this year. Do you recall what the first movie was? I think did you see The Red Turtle at all? Is that
I did not see The Red Turtle. The Red Turtle was also one that I don't think made it to us, or if it did, it was at a time when I couldn't go.
Yeah,
I don't think it made it to us. The first one that came to us, I'm pretty sure, was One Piece. Was the first one that we got. I'm pretty sure.
I recall when One Piece came out. I can't remember if that may have been late 2016.
It may have been late 2016.
Well, let's talk about the One Piece movie. I wanted to catch that one in theaters, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to make that work out. How was catching One Piece in theaters? I'm kind of curious, not only about the movie itself, but what the audience reaction or turnout would have been for that.
One Piece was real good. There was a lot of there's a lot of people there for sure. One Piece definitely has grown a lot since the days of the 4Kids airing. And like I think that's a benefit of having it's just been on for so long that the North American fan base has gradually grown to a size where it supports theatrical screenings a little bit more. It was definitely one of the ones that were had a bigger crowd than the other ones. But that was so One Piece definitely was one of the ones that I noticed a big crowd for, which was really neat.
We also got like Black Butler and Fairy Tail from Funimation this year as well. And I would imagine if they can justify national theatrical releases for those ones, then surely One Piece, despite being kind of the redheaded stepchild as far as major shonen shows in North America goes, surely that could sustain one as well. Although I'm sure that its performance wasn't on the level of like a Bleach or Naruto screening, unfortunately.
Probably not. My theater, I'd say, was probably about 60-75% packed, which was pretty good. And I didn't see Fairy Tail or Black Butler, so I wouldn't even be able to comment on those, just because those ones don't interest me at all. I had said to myself, I will see every anime showing. Nothing will deter me. And then those two came out, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm not seeing those ones.
I know a few people who definitely saw Black Butler, but yeah, I'm sure Fairy Tail did fine, but I skipped those ones myself. Yeah, how was the movie itself? I know
the movie itself was really fun. It was kind of like a heist movie with the One Piece characters, which I love heist movies. So a heist movie with One Piece is even better. It was fun. It has the problem that a lot of the newer One Piece movies have, the ones that were written by Oda, the mangaka, in that they're a little overlong. But besides that, I think like the action was great, the animation was fantastic, everything really worked well, and it was a really fun movie.
So it kind of has the opposite problem the earlier like One Piece or Toei movies have, where they're just kind of 45-minute frivolities that aren't really notable. But now they're like have the same problem that like real movies do, where they're a little longer than they need to be and maybe overwritten at times.
Yeah, and actually the second One Piece movie was one of the first One Piece things I ever saw, way back when at a 2003 convention, and that one really gripped me because that one was a really tight short action movie that was really good. And I've seen most of the One Piece movies. I think the best one is obviously the Mamoru Hosoda one that we haven't got here yet.
What is tying that up? Like I'm sure Funimation is trying to get that one out.
There must be something because especially with like the Hosoda collection they're putting out now and everything, there should be we should be getting that movie especially because that's one of the big ones that is pretty much the peak One Piece movie, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe Mongrel Media will get it. I guess another major movie from early in the year was this Viz's release of the Sailor Moon R movie, which we were really paranoid that we wouldn't get, but they did come through with us. They did come through for us in the end on that one.
Oh, I was petrified we weren't going to get that.
Yeah,
because I think didn't it air in November in the States?
Yeah, it was late 2016 in the States, and the pressure was on like very visibly in social media, at least for them to pull through and get that movie out here in 2017, and they did. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch that one either. But I mean, I'm sure Sailor Moon was a good time in the movie theater. I know that is a pretty fun movie overall.
Oh, it was. Just Sailor Moon R, the movie, one of the best. It has one of the best scenes. It has one of the best songs. It has the song Moon Revenge, which is one of the most iconic Sailor Moon songs. And so seeing that scene on a big screen was really just phenomenal. And that was probably the most packed I saw any theater anime screening this year, definitely. Which again speaks to Sailor Moon's staying power here in Canada. It was really fun. The only not great thing was that they had cast interviews before they actually played the movie, and the cast kind of talked about what was going to happen in the movie.
Oh yeah,
and I could tell that there were a lot of people who hadn't seen the movie, and they were like looking around at each other like, why are they telling us this? There were a lot of kids in Sailor Moon. There were a few dressed up. One parent brought their like 3 or 4-year-old, and she was like dancing along to the transformation sequences.
This is totally something that people who were fans of the show when it aired on TV would be bringing like very young kids to.
Oh, 100%.
Like, doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately for the people, like, they were on the little girls on the landing between the divide of seats.
Oh no.
And so she was like she was like kind of dancing around the whole time. And the poor people who were sitting like in the row in front of her, I could tell they were getting a little upset probably because she was being a little loud. But for me, who was sitting back, I just thought it was the cutest thing. So I'm glad I was sitting where I was sitting for that one. Otherwise, it might not have been as good a time. But it was still really neat to see like kids and parents bringing their kids. It was really, really fun. I really liked that one. That was probably my favorite screening of the year.
Yeah, it's such a short movie too, but I mean, just having the overall theatrical experience improved by little things like that is really what would make something like that worth it. I didn't catch the Cineplex release. I did see the movie. They screened it at Anime Revolution in one of their 2 screening rooms that they had, which is that's another issue. You can hear me get into that in depth in the Anime Revolution episode. But I did catch Sailor Moon R, and I actually never caught that when it aired on YTV. So I think that may have been the case for a lot of people. But yeah, it's a really fun movie. I can see a large crowd really getting into that in a fun way for sure.
Yeah. And when we missed a movie, actually, because I was looking through my Twitter at the movies I saw, we actually missed Girls in Panzer.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to note that one down. Yeah, that was one of the Sentai movies that did get a pretty surprisingly big push when it came out here. I think it was February or March or 2016?
January 26th, which is when it came out. And that was really fun. I had always wanted to watch Girls in Panzer, so I watched the show in like the week lead up to the movie, and I was actually really impressed with how fun that show was and how much of a sports show it actually was, and how like it didn't really focus on the cute girls doing cute things, even though that was a part of it. But the tank warfare was really what that show was about. And the movie itself ramps that up to like 11, to use, the colloquialism. The entire last half hour of that movie, or like last hour of that movie even, is one single long tank battle. And they do a really good job of stressing the importance of it leading up to it. So when they actually get to it, it becomes a really meaningful tank battle, and just like how the tactics used and how the battle ends up being won is just fascinating. And it's not what I would have expected from that show at all. I would expect a movie to like deal into like the fan service of like the girls are being cute together, blah 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 blah. But having like this really intricate, involved tank battle was not what I expected, and it was absolutely phenomenal. It was real good.
The enjoyment seems to be in just how it strikes the balance between those two things without sort of going too far in either direction.
Mm-hmm.
Did you catch the Yu-Gi-Oh movie? I think that was out in early 2017 as well.
I was not able to catch the Yu-Gi-Oh movie. That was it ended up being at a bad time for me, or it might have been during when I had a university class that I couldn't really skip out on. So that was one that I ended up not being able to catch, even though I wanted to.
And I guess was Sword Art Online Ordinal Scale? Was that I don't know if Sword Art Online is something that you're into at all.
Sword Art was one that I almost caught, but it was one of the weird things that Cineplex has been doing is like putting a movie on like a Sunday at like 12:30 p.m., which means that like it's really hard to catch it if you have anything else to do that day. And I think that was the case for Sword Art. I could go, but I couldn't get anyone else around me to go. So I didn't even bother. I tried watching some Sword Art to get back into the groove, but it just never happened.
Yeah, Sunday is actually a Sunday afternoon. That's a pretty good time to carve out a reservation at a theater for an event like this. I remember a few years ago, these screenings would always be on like a Thursday morning or something like that. But for a lot of these, they seem to be specifically getting evening or weekend time slots now. Not always, of course. We're still getting like the kind of Thursday at noon kind of thing. I think that's what happened with the third Kizumonogatari movie when it came out. Really, really strange time slot, but they seem to be carving out good times for a lot of these. And I know Sword Art Online, that movie got a huge opening in the United States. It was something like 300 screens across the country, and I think we got 30, which is a proportional release for sure. I think that the U.S. broadcast of the show influenced that a lot, and of course there was no equivalent of that in Canada, so I'm not sure if they took that into account, but it seemed to have done really well. I think it got a lot of fanfare for sure.
I think so. Sword Art has never really interested me past the first half of the first season. So there was nothing really there for me to latch onto. I would have seen it if I would have had the free time, but I just didn't at that time, so that's why.
I have watched one episode of Sword Art Online, just like the first episode. I couldn't get into it at all, so I never really picked it up beyond that. So I guess maybe I need to watch more to at least see this brief portion at the beginning when people say it was good. I should probably give that a shot at least.
Maybe at this point, I would say you don't really have to. I'm sure you've absorbed most of it through cultural osmosis.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I it is what it is.
Yeah. And I think around the same time was also when we got the first of the Love Live, I guess what they call the live delay concerts.
I think that first we got Your Name, actually, didn't we?
Oh yeah, okay, let's get into Your Name, because that's finally something that I actually did catch in theaters. So Funimation, it was a great accomplishment for Funimation because this was their first, I think, successful attempt to get a proper wide release for a movie in theaters across North America.
It was.
Yeah, it's because even with Dragon Ball Z, they weren't proper wide releases. They were scheduled on specific days. And they were lucky that a few specific theaters in like Los Angeles and other key cities would continue to play them beyond that. But this is the first time when they pulled all the stops and they actually got a proper limited wide release that they all opened on a specific day, and they remained in theaters as long as they made money, both subtitled and dubbed. And it's kind of frustrating because it took them so long to get there, and now they've just been bought out by Sony, which has sort of rendered that entire effort null and void, because now Sony can just handle theatrical releases for them.
Yeah.
So it's a little disappointing that they worked so hard to get there, and now it's just sort of irrelevant.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And, it also is a little frustrating that, I'm glad that Funimation pulled off a wide release for this, because it was a very high profile film release, and it seemed to do very well. The screenings were selling out all over the place in Metro Vancouver, at least. But they definitely did drop the ball by taking so long to get it out. And the reason is a little frustrating was because even the subtitled version was delayed. So that, cause Radwimps wanted to, dub the songs in the movie in English, and Funny was of course fully willing to comply with that wish and get it all produced, but the whole movie was delayed as a result.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate, especially for the Oscar push last year. It would have really benefited from having an actual release in that last year, because one of the important things that happened when Your Name came out here is that I heard the film podcast I listened to talk about Your Name. I heard Your Name absolutely everywhere, which I've never heard before, apart from like usually like it's like the one guy on the film podcast who watches anime talks about the new anime movie you saw for like about 5 minutes, but this was like entire episodes were done on it. And to have like this really big push to like have this reviewed and like see it everywhere really is kind of diminished by the fact that it could have had an Oscar nomination the previous year and it can't have an Oscar nomination this year, which really I think people are going to be like talking about why isn't Your Name on the best animated Oscar list, and people are going to be like saying, oh, it came out last year technically, even though everyone else saw it this year. And I think that's a big mistake. I think that maybe Funimation should have even like waited to put it out in the States until everything was clear for them to have like a full push, because I think it would have had a chance to at least been nominated this year pretty heavily, just for the attention that mainstream film press gave it this year.
For what I understand, this wasn't really Funimation's fault. I've heard apparently the Japanese distributor wanted it to have its qualifying run in 2016, but they wouldn't give out screeners or something, so it had a qualifying run that nobody could really, or that none of the people who needed to see it could really access.
And that's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah, that really sucks, because we still haven't gotten an Oscar nomination for a non-Studio Ghibli film. Is that correct, or has that changed?
To the best of my knowledge, I think Red Turtle is probably going to get one this year, or was it Red Turtle last year? I can't remember, but I think Red Turtle has a good chance of getting on there, and that's, I mean, that's kind of Ghibli technically. In its own weird way. Besides that, I don't think anything really noteworthy has happened.
I'm sure G-Kids will pull it off eventually, but
eventually,
yeah. I don't know if Funimation's equipped to even get that done, even if the qualifying run hadn't been botched somehow. But oh well. What's done is done, I suppose. What did you think of the movie itself? Do you think it lives up to the hype?
I absolutely loved it. I saw it 3 times in the theater. I saw it twice subtitled with different groups of friends, and then I had a week off, and I saw the dubbed version finally, because like what happened in my city is that the dubbed version quickly stopped playing, but the subbed version ran pretty much every night for about 3 or 4 weeks, and the dub version ended up being like a few days a week at like noon, maybe like one showing a week at noon during the week. So it ended up becoming a bit of an ordeal for me to go see it. I ended up being able to see it 4 weeks in. I finally saw the dubbed version. And the main reason I wanted to go to the dubbed version is I wanted to see how the dubbed songs worked in the movie. And the dub songs work really well in the movie. And like, if I could pick my own preferred version, I would pick the Japanese dialogue and the English songs.
Oh, really?
Because the English songs, like, the meaning and intent is still there. And I just think because they didn't subtitle the songs, a lot of their impact is lessened. And hearing the English songs, especially the one at the very end, that's the first time I really teared up, was when I could actually like understand the lyrics as the movie was ending, and I thought that really worked really well. But overall, I thought the movie was just gorgeous and really well told, really really well paced. You're never really bored during it, and I found it really interesting and really great the whole way through.
Yeah, I still haven't watched the dub myself. I do have the Blu-ray, so I'll probably check that out soon. And it was something similar happened with the screenings in Metro Vancouver, so I'm assuming this was kind of a countrywide thing. There were a lot of dubbed screenings initially scheduled, but later they added a lot of last-minute subtitled screenings, and they eventually became dominant and overshadowed the dub screenings completely. The dub was just kind of faded out pretty quickly, and it definitely wasn't as popular. So I think there was a little bit of a miscalculation in terms of what more people were going to see. I really liked the movie. I have not actually seen very many Makoto Shinkai films. I have seen Voice of a Distant Star, which I did really like. And I've absorbed a lot of what his films are like, and I didn't really find any of that in Your Name, or at least the kind of complaints that people have about his movies. It never takes a lot of time to become self-indulgent on Shinkai's part, in the way that that a lot of his films seem to be. The characters were really fun. There's obviously a twist in the movie, which I guess there's probably some people who haven't seen it yet, so I won't get into that, because I think it really increases the impact the film has, and which was a big reason of why it was so popular in Japan, because it really resonated with people because of that twist that happened partway through. But yeah, it's a really lovely, fun movie that I think appeals to. It's like an anime too. It's it's very much like a show that you would find on late night Japanese TV, but it's just executed in a way that I think is extremely accessible for mainstream audiences in Asian countries and even in Canada as well. And I think there's a lot of potential to see this film get re-screenings in theaters, the same way that you see Ghibli films get exposure as well. And I think we're already seeing that. I think the Van City Theater that does majority of the VITH screenings is apparently giving it another run later in January. So I'm expecting to see more of that kind of thing pop up in the future. In regards to the dub screenings, I know the screening I only saw it once subtitled, and most of the people in the audience were like teenagers or young adults in their 20s. I am told that apparently the few dub screenings that there were popular with families and children. And I'm just curious, when you saw it in theaters, do you recall what trailers played before it?
Oh, geez, no, I couldn't even remember. I'm sure there were trailers. I just think they were pretty generic, just regular, overall family-friendly type trailers, teen-friendly trailers. I think that's what played. Yeah,
because in BC, the film got a G rating in BC from Consumer Protection BC. But apparently some of the dub screenings had the types of trailers that you would expect in front of like most indie releases from Mongrel Media or whatnot. And apparently I can't I know at least one screening they showed the trailer for Ingrid Goes West, the one where Aubrey Plaza says "cunt" right in the trailer. And,
jeez.
Yeah, and that was and I'm trying to figure out like how something like that happened, because it is a violation from the way that trailers like that are supposed to be played in British Columbia. I'm guessing the assumption, if it wasn't just an outright mistake, was that only older people would want to go to see an independently released anime film, which obviously is completely untrue for something like Your Name. And it would also be a weird assumption because it's the complete opposite of what we usually think people, or how we usually think people interpret animation and anime releases in theaters. Kind of funny that happened, but also, pretty unfortunate too.
Yeah, that's pretty weird because if you've like even been to any anime screening, you would know that typically your audience is teens and early 20s, and usually, depending if it's like a lighthearted movie, like sometimes there's a lot of kids there. So I don't know how you could be like having anime screenings and not realize that's the people that come to it, unless you just like don't care or just make blanket assumptions based on the studio instead of the movie itself. So that's bizarre, man.
Yeah, it's weird stuff for sure. But hopefully we won't see stuff like that in the future. I hope there are more releases like Your Name, or I hope there's more movies like Your Name that will be given a similar kind of treatment. I don't think we'll see anything quite on the scale of Your Name. It was a kind of a one-time lightning in a bottle kind of situation there, but
I think so. Maybe the new Hosoda movie will have that same effect. I think that one has some potential to be like a big hit. But besides that, I don't like most of the anime movies that come out here are pretty franchise based. And if you're a franchise based movie, you have like your built-in audience already, and you're not necessarily going to hit that mainstream exposure like something like Your Name would. So I'd be interested to see if Hosoda's new movie Mirai hits that or not.
Yeah, well, we'll see who even winds up releasing Mirai here. Because I think Mongrel Media released Boy and the Beast, and it seems like they really didn't want to because they didn't promote the movie at all, as we discussed last year. But it almost seems like they received the rights due to some kind of weird technicality because of Galmont's involvement, and I think it had something to do with the fact that Funimation wasn't going to be able to produce a Quebec version, and they obviously wanted that to happen. And that I think that's why Mongrel Media wound up with the rights. But it doesn't seem like something they're going to be actively trying to get their hands on. So I mean, we'll see what happens next time.
Well, if Sony is with Funimation now, maybe they'll have an impact with that.
Yeah, for sure. That would probably make a big difference. Nonetheless, I think Funimation's release of Your Name in Canada was a lot better than Mongrel Media's release of Boy and the Beast was, in my opinion, at least.
Oh,
I
definitely.
Think there was more care done with that job and with that release and the promotion of it. So yeah, I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Me too. So looking back, the first Love Live concert actually did happen during March. It just never came out here in Winnipeg, so I never got a chance to view it. So that's kind of and of course the second one ended up being in Winnipeg, so I have a lot of memories about that one. But the first one I didn't get a chance to see. But from what I understood, it looked like it was a pretty big success. It must have been if they were going to get a second one in here.
I mean, it got quite an impressive run for something of that nature. If you're not familiar with these live delay shows, they're basically the voice actresses from Love Live, or at least the singers that they use. I don't really know how what goes on behind the scenes with the
voice actors and
shows.
singers.
Voice actors and singers. They're basically doing a 3 to 4 hour concert that is released unsubtitled in theatrical screens. And I think I don't know what the story is about how they got this or how they decided to try releasing it. I think they just kind of had the rights to it and decided to throw it out there and see what happens. And it seems that it did better than anyone expected. So it actually got a wider run. And I know this was later in the year, but why don't I know that the Happy Party Train Tour live delay did reach those less frequented markets in Canada, and that includes Winnipeg. And Randy, how did that go for you?
It went really well. I was all set. Of course, I think Winnipeg has a really big Love Live base. We have about 4 to 8 Love Live groups doing shows at conventions and stuff. So it's really developed this weird dancing group kind of focus that a lot of Idol fans really enjoy and come to the concert. So
that's been happening outside of Vancouver too.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like there's a few fan clubs that have popped up around Canada, and they came to the concert decked out in all of their Love Live swag, their capes, their light sticks. I had a pen light, so I was able to bring that with me. And it was basically like being in a theater that was basically a Japanese concert, which was really neat. There was a lot of glow sticks, a lot of light sticks waving, a lot of chants happening, and it was good because it wasn't just like a few people. It was basically most of the audience for the whole show. So it led to this like really high energy, for like the 3-hour high energy concert, which was really, really neat to be a part of. It was really, really super cool.
It's neat that they're able to like emulate and sustain that with just a theatrical screening. But I guess that just demonstrates the passion behind the Love Live fan base in most major cities.
So I think one of the reasons that people tend to go so nuts for these concerts is because they haven't actually been to Japan and seen a Japanese concert. I had the opportunity last year to see the Anamello Summer Live last year, which was huge, as in the Saitama Super Arena. Huge crowd, tons of light sticks, everything that you expect from a Japanese concert was there. And like this is like a mini version of that. So for me, it was like kind of like getting that feeling again, even if it's like a much smaller, more condensed feeling. So that was really neat. And then for people who have never been to Japan, who have only seen this stuff on TV, it's their chance to be a part of what that kind of experience is like. And I think it's really cool. Like the Love Live fan group was handing out call books to everyone who walked in going to see Love Live. Tons of Love Live plushies were everywhere, and it was really, really fun overall.
Yeah, I really wish that the companies in Japan and also the companies in North America that localize this stuff and the conventions in Canada would make more of an effort to try and get these idol performances in this country, and at least in some of the major cities. It's a really big missed opportunity, and there's such a thirst for it. But it really seems that they're overlooking it in the markets where it would do really well. It's unfortunate for sure. So. Yeah. Well, hopefully,
it would be a lot easier for me to fly to Vancouver for a con with Idol guests than it is for me to fly to like LA.
Yeah,
for a con.
But I mean, you think a con the size of Anime North would be able to orchestrate something like an Idol performance, and even at a slightly smaller scale to what a con like AX is able to do. But for some reason, the traction just doesn't seem to be there for something like that to happen. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, well, Anime North has had their J-Rock North for a while. I don't know if that's still going on, but I think like that's where their music focus is, and I don't necessarily want to comment on that, but maybe that's not where their music focus should be if they want to get more people to go to the show. But that, Anime North is Anime North, and will always be Anime North.
Yeah.
And that's all I'll say about anime.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on. I think. Did you catch the Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress compilation movies?
No, it didn't. It almost came here. Then it at the last second, I think something happened with the Crunchyroll, with my theater, and it kind of like petered out. Didn't quite work.
That's unfortunate. I know it was at the Landmark theaters rather than Cineplex.
It was, and I so I didn't notice that at first either, until like the week of, and when I looked for tickets, I really couldn't find them anyway. So I'm not sure if that's just my local theater's issue or what happened with that, but it was definitely very weird.
Yeah, The Cabinet of the Iron Fortress compilation movies were released by Crunchyroll. And this is definitely one of the strangest licensing situations we've seen in a while, because the streaming rights for Cabinet of the Iron Fortress are, of course, held by Amazon. But Crunchyroll got everything else, but then they ultimately have farmed most of what's happening with that show outside of streaming to Funimation, who's handling both the dub and home video distribution. But Crunchyroll did handle the theatrical release for these compilation movies, which was an interesting opportunity, because I think at the time that these came out, the Amazon Prime still wasn't really widely available in Canada, or at least the app wasn't out, so a lot of people couldn't really access it properly at the time. Have you watched Cabinet?
I've seen the first episode, and okay. I thought it looked really cool, but the plot just didn't really hook me at all. But I always thought about giving a second look, just because I like those Haruhiko Mikimoto designs so much. But it takes a lot to grab me nowadays, and that one just did not quite have the appeal I was looking for.
It's thin on plot for sure, but I found that just with the nature of the show, which is, train zombies, in a post-apocalyptic world, I didn't think a really thick plot was really necessary. I felt that the show delivered all it needed to. People are really critical of the second half of it, which I guess would be constitute the second movie in the compilations. Mainly because there's a villain that kind of comes out of the woodwork, and he's not really that interesting or charismatic. I personally, I wasn't watching the show week by week, because of course I didn't have access to Amazon when it came out. I just kind of watched it in the series in two chunks, similar to the compilation films. I watched the first half, and then we watched the second half later. I personally didn't really have too much of a problem with the second half myself. I can see why viewers would be frustrated with it on a weekly basis. I think when all taken together, it's a pretty entertaining show overall, and it delivers what it needs to for what it is for the most part. And I am looking forward to season 2. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a good show. If you haven't seen Cabinet, check it out on Amazon for sure. And
I'm probably gonna check it out. I just got a Prime stick or a Fire Stick for Christmas, so I might check it out, because it's in my face every time I turn on the app. So
are those available in Canada now, or
I think they just became available this year.
Oh, okay.
Because I got one because I got an Echo for Christmas, and I wanted to connect the two, and so far, that capability is not an option in Canada yet.
Yeah.
You can't connect your Echo to your TV, and I didn't know that yet. So, right now my Echo controls my lamp, which is great, but not quite what I was looking for from it.
See, if Carl were on this episode, he'd be going on a huge rant about the Amazon ecosystem right now. But I don't have as much to say about that. But it is kind of weird that they have created this whole service, but that is supposed to be compatible with this whole the set of devices, but don't really seem to release a lot of those devices outside of the United States. You'd think that Amazon would be better at something like that, but I guess not. But I guess actually next up would be the other Crunchyroll release that happened this year, which I understand you did get, which was the first 3 episodes of Ancient Magus Bride. Now personally, I have some issues with the way they handled this release, primarily because we did not get any screenings for this in British Columbia.
Really?
We didn't know. If this was I really have to question the marketing research that went into whatever decision informed what cities they decided to do this release in. I wasn't able to see this, but you did catch it. Now, I just to clarify, this was the first 3 episodes of the show. It was not the OVA, right?
Correct.
And I'm sure that opening credit sequence looks stunning on the big screen.
We didn't get it.
Oh, you didn't? Okay,
the opening credit sequence was the one thing that was not in the show, and it's kind of what I wanted to see the most when I went to go see it, because I'd been borrowing the manga from the library, and I had just caught up to the latest release when the screening happened, and so I was really interested to see what kind of opening are they going to give this show, and of course the opening had not been finished yet. I think after I got out of the movie, I think maybe a few days later, the first trailer for the show came on, and that had the opening in it finally. So that was really neat.
I think the opening was the last thing they did, because I think
it must have been.
It's not very good. But there were several screenings in Ontario, one in Halifax, one in Calgary, one in Winnipeg. Nothing in Quebec, nothing in British Columbia. I'm really interested to know why that happened, because that's a huge oversight on. I'm not sure who would be to blame for that. Would it be Crunchyroll itself or whoever handled that release? Was it Screen Vision? Apparently, I don't think I've heard of them before.
No, I've never heard of them either.
Yeah, Crunchyroll, Screen Vision, Chaos Connect. So it looks a lot of people have their fingers in this. Someone should have caught that, because Quebec and British Columbia are two areas you really shouldn't miss on a major release like this. So it's a little disappointing that happened. But yeah, how was the experience of catching the debut of that show in a theatrical setting?
It was really cool. I was really happy that they brought it in, that I got an early look at it. It was really good that they showed the first 3 episodes, because I don't feel like Magus Bride really hits its visual strides until the 3rd episode, when there's a really, really nice moment that really encapsulates what the feeling of the manga. So having the 3 episodes together was really good. If it was just the first 2, I would have been a little more disappointed, because the first 2 are pretty. The direction wasn't handled super well, but by the 3rd episode, I think they really got what they're going for. So that worked out really well.
Yeah, it seems a lot of the appeal for this screening is just to the fact that these episodes hadn't been seen before.
Yeah.
When I really think the OVAs would have been a better overall experience to see on the big screen, because they just
probably
there's a higher budget went into those for sure. I feel it. I don't know if the director is the same for the OVA and the TV series, but there's a different feel between them for sure. I think the OVA captures a lot of more what I was hoping Magus Bride would be animated. The TV series is okay, but it's a little more stale than what we got in the OVAs, and I often get the feeling that I'm not gaining much compared to simply reading the manga. But yeah, it's still neat that a show that was still a few months away from debuting got a previous screening like this. It was
and that was why I saw it myself. I wanted to see that. I wanted to see the Children of Ether as well, which was I don't know what the deal is with that. I think it's co-produced by Crunchyroll, or it's part of the Kickstarter situation. But that was shown beforehand, and that was a really neat little proof of concept that they played, which was really neat.
So
I like that too.
So it's something that's being developed for Crunch. Oh yeah. What was Children of Ether again? I've actually completely forgotten.
Children of Ether is created by.
Oh yeah, it's LaShawn Thomas.
LaShawn Thomas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And it's his action show that he joining forces with some of the animators in Japan to create. And they had a nice little making of beforehand where they interviewed everyone. They interviewed the Japanese staff, and they were talking about how different it was to work with a product that's originally English than in Japanese. And LaShawn Thomas was talking about how his process was working with Japan, which was really neat. I like kind of that inside baseball kind of stuff that they show. So that was all really neat. And then another thing that Crunchyroll did in general was they had their own team do videos beforehand too. And if you like the Crunchyroll brand, it was really nice to see. I know like the Crunchyroll brand isn't for everyone. It's definitely of a type. But if that's something that if you enjoyed watching the Crunchyroll guys just do their stuff, it was really fun to watch as well. And so the whole Crunchyroll movie night was really, really interesting. And I hope they do more of it. This one I hope was a success, and we'll see if they do more. I hope they do.
Yeah.
It was very neat.
Yeah, I haven't. I'm looking forward to Children of Ether now that I remember what it is. I forgot briefly. Yeah, and I hope they do more, but I don't think they've announced anything as of right now. So we'll keep our eye on that for sure. So Randy, did you catch Napping Princess in theaters? Did you get a screening for that in Manitoba yet?
Napping Princess did not come here.
Yeah,
and that's one of the shows that I'm might be looking at working with G Kids to bring over here, but I am still in the process of debating if that's worth bringing over, because I've heard conflicting things about that show in general, so or that movie I should say. So I'm waiting for more opinions before I make any decisions on that, but I'm thinking about what I'm gonna do, work with G Kids to bring over, and that's an option.
Yeah,
for me, because we didn't get it here.
It initially launched in Toronto and Vancouver, and then I think it expanded to a few more Cineplex theaters in throughout the country. I liked it. It's not an amazing movie, and I think that's I think people had high expectations for it, and the fact that it doesn't really meet high expectations is a reason why you're not hearing people talk about it too much. I definitely did find it enjoyable and worth seeing, though. Just because it's not amazing doesn't mean it's not worth your time. It was, of course, directed by Kenji Kamiyama, who is the guy who directed Standalone Complex and Eden of the East. And yeah, he's not the most skilled storyteller for like a family movie, which this was, but I think he adapted his sensibilities quite well. Yeah, and the character designs were really great. If you're a fan of Standalone Complex, especially, you'll really admire how technology is rendered in this movie. There's a lot of similarities. You'll see like, oh, that kind of looks like a Tachikoma. That has a similar approach to how they went about things in Standalone Complex, but a little better realized and with a better budget than what you saw on that show compared to a few years ago. The storytelling's a little sloppy, like it has a really logical structure, and then it just kind of throws that all out the window at the end in a way that didn't really work, but I didn't have a huge problem with it. I still really liked it. I think it's worth your time, for sure. I think it's worth looking into, especially if it's one of the few movies that didn't open up in Winnipeg. But yeah, it's not, it's not amazing. And I think people had higher expectations for it, but I still liked it a lot. Mm-hmm. So I guess next we should talk about In This Corner of the World, which is something that I think surpassed people's expectations a lot. I know this movie was in development for a very long time. And you were able to catch the screening for this one in Winnipeg?
I was, and it was in development for a long time. When I went to Otakon in about 2015, 2014, they had Sunao Karabuchi there, and he was talking about the project at that time before it was even like in production, like being animated or anything. And he was showing the audience different illustrations, and he was talking about where each person lived and if they survived the bombing or if they didn't survive the bombing, and just this level of detail and passion really came through, and I instantly knew that I had to see it as soon as it came out, and luckily it came over here, and I got the opportunity to see it, and it really blew me away with just how wonderful and tragic and life-affirming that movie really was. It really was more than I was anticipating it being, and just the way they depicted life in a wartime era was really, really fascinating, and I really liked this movie. I think this was probably if not my favorite, my second favorite anime showing that I saw all year. It was just absolutely breathtaking and wonderful.
Yeah, I did watch it. I was not able to see it in the theaters, for reasons I'll rant about in a moment. I thought it's a very powerful film. I think that making the creative decision to set this story in the city of Kure, which is just on the periphery of Hiroshima, so again, not where the bomb hit, but just sort of within distance where it's not going to where it didn't have a direct impact, but the impact was felt. I think was greatly contributed to the effect of the movie, and just watching the people in the movie that are not like the types of people you would normally expect to get focus in a film dealing with this kind of subject matter. They felt like more carefree individuals, rather than world weary type of people that you kind of are used to seeing in movies that deal with this kind of subject matter. It's a really powerful film. It's surprising in a lot of ways. One thing that kind of took me off guard was the way it portrayed Western elements of society in Japan at that time, which is not something you normally see in period pieces focusing on that era of Japan. Because, of course, during the Meiji Restoration, there was so much westernization happened. And a lot of that tends to get glossed over in the way Japan is usually depicted in World War II films. Like, right in the beginning, you see Hiroshima at Christmas time, and you have, Western images of Santa Claus, which is not something that I ever really imagined being there at the time. But it does kind of make sense, and it kind of sheds a different light on what life was like right at that moment in history. in that area of Japan. So little touches like that kind of take you off guard and surprise you and challenge your expectations for what you're going to see in a movie like this. Going back to the setting of the film in Kure, it really reminded me in the Barefoot Gen movie, how which was a very bold movie that I don't think could be made again today. Because there's that one scene I'll never forget where the narrator of the film explicitly blamed the Japanese government for the Nagasaki bombing because they were so secretive about what had happened at Hiroshima. I kind of got that impression with the way the reaction to the bombing happened in Kure, because people aren't entirely sure of what exactly had happened, and there's so many rumors and so many rumors and speculation about the degree of impact that had happened, and it's haunting in a very specific sense. And that it just reminded me of that, and the way the events were interpreted just there in the moment, and it captures it in a really unique way, and it's definitely a powerful film. I really wish I could have. What was it like seeing that in a theater?
It was really intense. One of the things I like about the theater is that you're forced to be quiet and not look away and view these events as they are happening. Mm-hmm. I feel there's lots of moments here where someone could get distracted by what's on their phone if they're watching it at home, and in the theater situation, you don't have that opportunity. So you're forced to watch the slowness of life and watch how life just gets more and more messy as the war continues. And then finally, when there's two really big moments in this movie, when they both happen, you get the full impact of what you just saw, and you're forced to keep watching and not really look away. And so that experience was really, really intense. My roommate ended up full on crying for the last half hour of the movie, like last 15 minutes. Because it was just so intense, and it's really powerful seeing in the theater. It was a really, really breathtaking experience to witness.
Yeah. I did buy it, and I watched it at home because I wasn't able to get into the screening. When did you buy tickets in advance for the movie?
Maybe a day before.
Okay, because in Vancouver, we got one screening. For basically, it was for all the province of BC. There was one single screening on like a Thursday at 7 p.m. at a single theater. It sold out well over a week in advance, and no other screenings were added. But I know a lot of people who really wanted to see it, and they were kind of denied that experience due to the limited screenings. And it was similar in Winnipeg. There was only one screening. But of course, Winnipeg, I think, is a smaller city overall. But also in Montreal.
Winnipeg's a bit smaller, so the number of people who know about the screening, make sure they go see it. There was a lot of people who don't normally come to anime screenings. There are a few more older Japanese people who came. There are Japanese who came with their family. So not the usual crowd I would expect from an anime screening, which was also really, really interesting and really neat.
Oh yeah, a movie like this definitely plays to a different audience than would typically be to come to a movie specifically because it's anime. But also Montreal, only a single screening on the 21st of August is when that happened. But Alberta got multiple screenings, about half a dozen. Same in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and there were dozens and dozens of screenings that took place across Ontario. I'm sorry. There was some more screenings in Quebec as well, just not in Montreal. But it's really just kind of, I feel Vancouver really got hosed on that one. I think this was a rollout that was not really planned out well, or at least I don't think priorities were all really given in the right areas, or some areas got an exorbitant amount of focus and other areas of the country didn't. I'm really disappointed. I think this was a botched release in a lot of ways for a lot of people across the country. And again, I'm not sure who organized this one. I don't know if it was, I think it's Shout Factory. I don't know who they use for organizing these releases, but
yeah. It would have been Shout Factory's second or third movie that I'm aware of that they've done over here. because they did the Digimon movie. I think we only got the first one here.
Yeah.
They brought that out, and then they brought this one out. So that's what I'm aware of. I think I don't know if they have anything to do with Ultraman, but that came over too.
I believe they did Ultraman.
Okay.
Did the other Digimon movies after the first one, did they get U.S. theatrical releases, or was it just the first one that got that treatment?
Movies 4, 5, and 6 are getting theatrical releases. I just saw them in the news recently, but I don't think movies 2 and 3 have got released.
Okay, yeah, but disappointed by the way that was handled, and I hope we don't have situations like that in the future, because this is a movie that I think like a lot of people really should see. It's a beautiful and difficult movie, but a great one for sure. So that was kind of my big disappointment for theatrical releases this year, regarding how that one was handled. But did you catch? I know I think you caught Pokemon the movie I Choose You.
I did catch Pokemon the movie I Choose You.
And how did that go?
It was it was a really interesting movie. I think it's a movie that works way better in Japanese than it would in English because of the Pikachu speaking part. Because I
and it is a dream sequence, right?
It's kind of a dream sequence. Ash has been like really, really injured, and as he's fading out of consciousness, he hears Pikachu talk because he wants Pikachu to go in the Pokeball. And I think that if this was in Japanese and you heard Ikue Otani speak for the first time as Pikachu, you would have a much different experience than if you heard this random English woman voice speaking as Pikachu for the first time ever. So I think like that's a distinctly Japanese experience that you can't replicate in the English version at all. But apart from that, I found the movie to be really, really interesting, really well animated, really fun. It's kind of breaking out into its own like pseudo retelling of the Pokemon story, which I found to be really interesting. The way they introduced these new characters felt really genuine in its own way. There was lots that I really ended up liking about it. It kind of falls into old Pokemon movie tropes of saving the world, and like the one legendary is the focus of the whole movie, and they are what is going to end or save the world. And so there's kind of those things fall into it, which I wasn't as fond of. I wish that it would have just been like a retelling with a little more. That's not quite what I got, but overall I thought like the new animation, the new focus on Ash and Pikachu really worked. I think that it could have had a much more impactful moments if Pikachu and Ash's relationship was focused on a little bit more. But I think that overall it was pretty fun. Lots of kids came to this one too, of course, because it's Pokemon. They're probably the most kids I've seen in a theater. And that was really good. And this was probably the most packed a theater I saw, which was neat to see. And
Kunihiko Yuyama is still directing those Pokemon movies after all these years, too. That has to be one steady paycheck he's getting.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So, and they just announced that they're doing another movie with a second animation studio. I forget what the second animation studio is, but the trailer for that movie came out. It looks vastly different, so I'm really interested in how that one's going to work out too. I think it's going to be pretty connected to this last one. I think like they kind of do movie trilogies as it were now. They have for the past 2 generations of Pokemon, so we'll see how that turns out. But like the new animation style looks really interesting. I want to say it's Studio Shaft, but I don't think it's quite Shaft. But it's someone. It's a big animation studio that people were really expecting. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was neat how it renewed a lot of interest. Well, Pokemon is something that doesn't really seem to require renewed interest, but I mean, so many of these movies have come out over the years, and this one was the first in a long time that seemed like a big deal for people.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and it's Studio Wit.
Oh, okay.
Not Studio Shaft. Studio Wit being the ones who did Attack on Titan and Ancient Magus Bride.
Okay. So before we get into the one of the big things that happened was G-Kids made a deal with Cineplex to finally get Studio Ghibli films, which have traditionally run in more independent theaters across the country, and I think in the United States as well. But they're now starting to play in Cineplex theaters. Before we get into that, though, which other movies were you able to catch this year? I know there was still also No Game, No Life, Zero, and Mary and the Witch's Flower, and A Silent Voice. Did you catch any of those ones?
I caught A Silent Voice when it came out on the UK iTunes a few months before. I bought a UK iTunes card and I got a bunch of friends together and we watched it theatrical style. So Silent Voice was really, really good to watch. I really, I had a really good time watching it. There's a few differences from the manga that ends up being not a great thing, in terms of how characters are developed and how they change over the course of the movie. There's a few major story elements that aren't in the movie, but I think the movie itself is told very well. The animation's fantastic, obviously, because it's Kyoto Animation. The director, I'm a big fan of her. She did the Tamako Love Story movie, which I think is probably Kyoto Animation's best work they've done yet. And so Tamako Love Story has a lot of really slow character moments, and the director tried to do that in this one too. Didn't quite succeed as much as I would have liked, but I think that A Silent Voice is overall just a phenomenal movie, and I think maybe if Your Name and In This Corner of the World didn't come out, it probably would have been my favorite anime movie of the year, but those other two are just so much better that it's not even a contest of which is my favorite anime movie of the year. So that one I ended up seeing. I wish, and then I didn't really feel the need to see it again, so I didn't see it when it came to theaters.
Yeah, I still haven't seen that one. I had meant to see it in theaters, but unfortunately I was completely tied up the day it came out. And I think it had another extra day added later, and I still didn't go see it. So that's my own fault. Well, sort of.
Yeah. So as far as anime goes, those are the ones that I didn't get to see. No Game, No Life either. Mary and the Witch's Flower didn't come out here yet. It might come out still. Who knows?
Yeah, its release is still super limited. I don't think it's played at some film festivals. I think that's about it. Hopefully we'll be hearing about that one in the new year, because I think it's getting its sort of not wide, but kind of. I think it's getting its primary release in the States in February or something. So we'll probably get a little after that. Mm-hmm. But as for sorry, go ahead.
Just before we get into the Ghibli, I also saw some live action movies.
Oh yeah.
The first one would be the Tokyo Ghoul live action movie came out here, and that one I found really interesting, in terms of how it didn't deviate at all from the source material. It was really just almost like a chapter by chapter recreation of the manga, which I have never seen before in a live action movie. I think overall it worked pretty well. I think the actress who plays Toka is phenomenal. I first heard of her when I watched Kamen Rider Forze, and she ended up joining Happy Science, and
oh no.
Yeah, and now she acts under a different name, but it's still her, and she is phenomenal. She's a really good actress. The guy who plays the main character is really good too. I had a really fun time watching it. The effects weren't as obnoxious as Japanese movies tend to be sometimes. I found the CG pretty passable. So if you if it's a situation where if you like Tokyo Ghoul, you will like that movie. I think it works. I think it works really well as a live action movie, to my astonishment almost.
Okay, so yeah, one of the big developments this year was Studio Ghibli films now playing in Cineplex theaters across the country, and this is pretty big news because it greatly increases the exposure that the movies are going to get, and the advertising they're going to get, and the promotion they're going to get. And the thing about these classic Studio Ghibli movies is that they can never get enough exposure. I think that the ceiling for that is limitless, especially when, they didn't really get the exposure they needed back when they were originally released in the 80s and 90s. And I don't think that any effort would ever fully make up for that. So, any anything that will help get them to more eyeballs that have never seen them before, and that will increase their cultural relevance to Canadian audiences is always going to be a good thing. But this is definitely taking a big thing away from independent theaters that were able to get a lot of mileage out of this in the past. And not to say that they won't be able to show them anymore, but we kind of have this problem now where Cineplex, which is essentially a cinematic monopoly across the country, is just sort of now absorbed the one remaining anime item that they didn't have before, and which again it's good in the sense that it gives them more exposure, but it does make things a lot more insular, for sure.
Yeah, it is pretty unfortunate in that respect. In Winnipeg, most of the independent theaters haven't lasted to this point. We have one true art house theater left, and then we have a Landmark Cinemas. We have 2 Landmark Cinemas, and then the rest is Cineplex, which is not the best thing, but it just because our city can't really support independent theaters besides the one we have, it's become a bit of an issue.
It's awful. There's so few independent theaters left here in Vancouver too, and I think it's the same in every city.
Yeah, so it becomes a bit of an issue, especially because the one independent theater in our city can't really keep up with the technical the technical developments that Cineplex has with their sound and their screen and their fake IMAX and everything that they have, to the point where one of the main things I look for when I go to the theater is the sound, and that's what Cineplex has for me. And the independent theater is making improvements all the time. I just saw Moonlight there about half a year ago, and I noticed that their theater has improved a lot since the last time I was there, which was for Paprika, years and years ago, almost 10 years ago at this point. So it's a little unfortunate, but the independent theaters don't really have a lot of what I'm looking for, which is anime or other Japanese stuff, which is pretty unfortunate. So something like the Ghibli anime series works out pretty well for me, in terms of I'm not going to see those any other way, and it's the best opportunity that smaller cities like Winnipeg have, which is not the best situation, but you got to work with what you got.
Yeah, and did you catch all the movies when they were shown in Cineplex?
I caught every last one, which was my intention, and I managed to get it. It went over 6 months. I think it started in June and it just ended the first week of December.
Yeah.
So it went over a long time. So I was all in for it, and I was pretty pleased with what I got too. Watching these movies again, some of them start to finish for the first time was really good to watch. And I'm just gonna go through them. Like Totoro, seeing it in the theater on a big screen it changed how I saw the movie in general. I had not really seen it in a few years, but I knew the beat pretty well because I had seen it a number of times. But watching in the theater and really taking the time to view everything that was on screen all the time, kind of going back to what I was saying about This Corner of the World and watching it at home versus watching in the theater, you're forced to watch all the details, and seeing Totoro in the theater really changed how I saw that movie, and it was really something special. And I when I saw Totoro, I knew that I was going to see the rest of them because I wanted to have this new experience when I saw all the movies. So that was really impressive. And then Kiki's I saw for the first time start front to back.
Really?
I had seen Kiki's a number of times. Yeah, I had seen Kiki's a number of times, but usually I would catch it in about the middle, towards the end. But I actually don't think I had ever seen the beginning part of the movie before, despite catching it on TV a lot. My grandparents had Disney Channel. It aired on Disney Channel a lot, and I watched it then quite a bit. but I had never seen it start to finish, and so that was really fun. And I think Kiki's is jumped way up on my list of my personal list of Ghibli movies that I like a lot.
It's definitely a movie that grows with every viewing. The themes run surprisingly deep in that one, and I think it's definitely the type of movie you will always get more as you watch it more, and as you get older too. It's a very well constructed movie.
Yeah, I think it's definitely probably like Ghibli's Miyazaki's like hidden gem movie. I would say almost like I do get a lot out of it. The more I think about it, and the more I watch it. Next was Castle in the Sky, which I had seen before, and I think is a really fun adventure movie. And I just like watching the places it goes is really interesting and fun to watch. There's not much more to say about Castle in the Sky besides like it's really well done and it's a fun adventure movie. The themes aren't as strong as the other ones, and I think like the joy of Castle in the Sky is watching how the plot is going to develop, and that one's fun. Next up was Nausicaa, which I thought was which I find probably his weakest, the one that I like the least. It reminds me a lot of like a Ralph Bakshi fantasy movie almost. And I think like it's definitely one of his more mature movies. And you can see like that early like that 80s style creep into it, which is neat to watch.
When I saw Nausicaa for the first time, I made the mistake of reading the manga first, and that really ruins the movie because the manga is so much better. The movie, you get the joy of seeing the characters and world realized in animation, and I actually haven't seen it in theaters. I'm sure it would be great to see that even more so on the big screen. But when you read the manga, you're only getting like a snapshot of the true depth that exists in that story and the places it goes later. So I think I forever ruined Nausicaa for myself by doing that. But it's still a great looking movie though.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. Personally, I have every volume but 4 of the manga, so I'm still waiting to like complete my set before I go and read it through.
Oh man, it's so good.
I'm gonna get through it at one point.
Yeah.
Next was the one that I was most excited to revisit because I hadn't seen it in a long time, and that was Spirited Away.
Yeah, I revisited Spirited Away recently, and I actually had not seen it since CBC's notorious botched airing back in like 2006 or 2007. Yeah, that's a movie that. Oh, sorry. You talk about maybe your experience with it first.
Yeah, sure. So Spirited Away was definitely one I was most excited to see again. And I watched it when it first came out on DVD. Mm-hmm. It was a Christmas gift that I got, and I watched the hell out of it. I watched it over and over again. I really, really like just the overall feeling of that movie. And I think that the train sequence when Chihiro and No Face are riding on the train is just my favorite Ghibli movie moment ever. Just how you've been stuck in this one elaborate world, and suddenly you go on this train and the worldview is expanded so much without a single word of dialogue. I think it's just absolutely stunning, and it really cements Spirited Away as probably my favorite Ghibli movie. I would say my favorite Miyazaki movie, anyway.
That scene alone really makes the movie stand out, just as an artistic.
It really
does.
In
general, yeah. I know when I first saw Spirited Away, I did see it in the theaters, but I had a extremely difficult time finding someone who wanted to see it with me, and I went and saw it with my dad, and he hated it. And he was vocal about his hatred, like at the theater and all the way home, and it really soured my experience watching the movie the first time. Even when I went back on subsequent viewings, I felt that the experience of the movie had been diminished somewhat, and it kind of didn't live up to my expectations. And also, when I first saw it, I was a dumb 17-year-old, And I was especially dumb for a 17-year-old. So I was kind of too old to appreciate it on like a purely surface level, but I was still not like intellectually or emotionally mature enough to appreciate like its more artistic elements and its critiques on like conformity and capitalism and all of those things that Miyazaki rolls into his big. It's essentially Old Man Yells at Cloud, the movie, but it's done exceptionally well. It captures the way Miyazaki sees the world, and that's something I appreciate more going back and watching it now. It definitely. I'm glad that I put such a long buffer of time since the last time I watched it, because I really wanted to explore it with fresh eyes, and man, it was an experience watching it again when I did so recently. It's an amazing film. I feel like I felt it was overrated before. I do not feel that way now.
Yeah. And then the last one that came out was Howl's Moving Castle.
Oh boy.
So the interesting thing about this is that how the Ghibli movies worked was it would be the English dub version on Sunday at 1:00 p.m. and then the subtitle version would be on the Wednesday at 7 p.m. And so I had gone to the subtitle versions of all of them the same night all the time. And one of the theaters, the first few I went to, Cineplex didn't enable the subtitles.
Oh.
And so people had to like run out and tell them like, hey, there's no subtitles, go fix this. So that happened for Kiki's and Castle in the Sky.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, it was not great.
That reminds me of the time I went to see Short Piece, and they couldn't get the Blu-ray player it was running off of to work properly. We didn't get to see the movie at all, and we got refunds. But that still kind of sucked. Yeah.
And then I eventually went to a different theater that's a little closer. It's a little bit smaller for the rest of the series. And then Spirited Away and Nausicaa were in Japanese. And then I went to the viewing for Howl's the same night, and I expected it to be in Japanese, and then it was in English. And my only experience watching Howl's Moving Castle has been in English so far now, because when it first came out in the theater, way back when 2004.
Yeah, that was basically a dub only release.
It was, yeah. And I'd seen that movie twice when it came out. Once with a group of friends, and then once with the University Anime Club that I was hanging out with at the time. So I'd seen it twice then. I'm not convinced that movie has a Japanese version.
To be fair, the dub actually fixes plot holes in the film that make quite a bit of difference in the end, because the scarecrow thing just comes out of nowhere in the Japanese version.
Yeah, I really do like that dub a lot. I think Christian Bale's a good Howl, and then I think Emily Mortimer is Sophie, I believe. And then Billy Crystal as
Calcifer,
yeah, are all really great. So I really like that version. I'm actually not really upset that I didn't get to see it in Japanese, because I really like that dub a lot. And so Howl's was a movie that I think serves a specific market of like, I'd say almost like it's Miyazaki's most American friendly movie, I would say.
Really?
In that I think it follows very traditional Western storytelling like beats, as opposed to the other movies which kind of wallow in mood a little bit more than the rest. Maybe Castle in the Sky would be the other one that I think follows a little more traditional beats.
I actually found that Princess Mononoke has quite a Western narrative structure, despite the fact that, like, thematically and content-wise, it's probably his most Japanese movie. But yeah, the thing about Howl's Moving Castle is that I personally think it is the worst thing that Miyazaki has directed. The first half, I think, is okay. It's still like maybe his weakest directorial effort, but it still builds up well, and it has a decent structure, and you can follow along with it, and it's entertaining. But I mean, that second half, man, it really goes off the rails.
It's a little rough.
Yeah.
I can't bring myself to feel anything negative towards House Moving Castle. I think that the first up to the very like last third of the movie, I think is all absolutely wonderful. And the last third, I think, is a little messy, but overall ends up working in the end. I think that maybe just because the dub fixes a bit of stuff.
It really does. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is messy, but I do really, really enjoy it a lot. And I don't think, like, even knowing the criticism and understanding and acknowledging them, there's just something about it that works for me, and I really do enjoy. I think it's the characters, really, that just kind of are fun. Like Sophie is really wonderful throughout the whole movie, and I think that just like her dealing with what she has been going through and just like accepting it and moving on and with her life is really interesting. I really like her in general, and I think the movie as a whole I ended up really enjoying.
Yeah, visually I think the castle itself is really stunning. Whenever I see it, I'm like, it kind of reminds me of the exact type of style that René Laloux, who directed like Fantastic Planet and a few other movies. I think it's kind of like the look he was striving for in his films, but could not actually achieve due to the limitations of technology at the time. I think that's my favorite part of that movie. I think everything else in the movie looks kind of off-putting. I know that in starting in Spirited Away, Miyazaki kind of had this fixation of giving this, animating like sludge and giving like a goo-like shiny texture to things. And it almost seems like he tried to put that look into as many things as possible in this film that weren't the castle. And I find it really kind of jarring and off-putting myself. The look of the film overall just doesn't work for me. I have issues with Howl's Moving Castle overall, for sure. It's even if you don't think it's his weakest picture, it's definitely his messiest.
Oh yeah. Definitely. I would definitely say that it's a very messy movie overall.
Yeah.
But I think that adds a little to its charm, even. In that, like, it's just this weird movie that, as you watch it kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And just overall, I really ended up liking that. And that was the whole series, yeah.
Oh, and also one thing that we didn't get that I forgot about is that I know that earlier this year, or maybe late last year, I've kind of lost track now. I know that G-Kids did a release of Princess Mononoke that had On Your Mark, that music video that Hayao Miyazaki directed, attached to it. But as far as I know, I don't believe any of the theatrical releases in Canada have had On Your Mark attached. Yeah, I hope they do something about that because, well, it's unfair to say that On Your Mark is Miyazaki's best theatrical work, because it's not a theatrical work; it's a music video. It is a different medium, so you can't really compare it to the others in a really a fair way. But I think I love it so much, and I'd love to see that on the big screen. I would go to any Studio Ghibli movie, probably primarily to see that over the movie itself in most cases. But seeing that back to back with Princess Mononoke would have been a great experience. I hope we might get an opportunity to see that in the future.
Yeah, well, G-Kids ended up they showed a bunch of short films. They showed like 2 to 3 short films before each of the Ghiblis.
Oh, really?
So that was really neat. It was really neat. There were some really fun ones in there, and some that I actually ended up using in my teaching practicums for learning narrative structures. So that was really neat.
Oh, cool.
I really enjoyed seeing these little short movies beforehand. It was really neat.
And I guess this hasn't premiered this year, but we did get at least an announcement that the Fate Stay Night Heaven's Feel Presage Flower is going to be playing in theaters in Canada, and surprisingly, it seems to be getting quite a push. I've been seeing advertisements for it all over social media.
Me too.
Which is not something that I have really seen for any Aniplex or Azoland theatrical release in Canada, and those have been like some of the rockiest ones we've gotten in the past. Because as we've pointed out, if not in this episode, then definitely before, in previous episodes. We got Kizumonogatari Part 1. We did not get Part 2 in theaters, but we did get Part 3, which was really messy. And there's been inconsistent presentation. We never got Dokisei and a few others in theaters. But it looks like they are taking the demand seriously with this one. So I hope it does well, because it would kind of be disappointing if they could put all this push into the first one and then we never got the upcoming second or third movie in that series because the first one didn't perform very well or below expectations.
Yeah, well, hopefully Aniplex has that fake Grand Order money flowing in, so we'll get something. We'll get the rest of them. I definitely think that's why we're getting Heaven's Feel in Canada. I would say because especially with they had a Thanksgiving event where if you used paid currency, you got a guaranteed servant that was really like 5-star. So we'll see if that continues. Hooray for gotcha practices, I guess.
I guess maybe that's how they determined to give it a fairly robust release here, because they saw how many people were playing that game in Canada.
I think so. I think it's just growing as it goes on. The game is fantastic. I think it has the balance of it's a fun game to play. You don't need to use the special 5-star exclusive 1% servants to beat the game. Like, you can beat the game without using anything above a 3-star servant, which is really good. And it has, like, the game itself is fun, and there's also waifus and husbandos, which works out well too, that are all really fun to play as. The writing is great. I think Fake Grand Order is really doing wonders for the brand, so I hope that that's going to continue. And I hope that brings.
I don't think that's something my wallet needs right now. So
no one needs gotcha games, but they're fun.
So Randy, anything else you're looking forward to next year in regards to theatrical, anime or otherwise?
No. The only thing that I was looking forward to was Fate, and right now we're getting that, which is the only thing that I want right now. These movies pop up when they pop up, and hopefully we get as many as we got this year. This year was pretty good. It wasn't quite 2016 levels. I think 2016 was really good for movies, but this one ended up becoming a really good year, especially towards the end. We got everything that I was really hoping for. So I hope that Canada is still seen as a viable market, especially my city, because I want to see more movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope we get those Eureka 7 movies, or the first one that's
me too.
coming out. It's scheduled for February in the States, and they still haven't said anything about Canada. And, if we got Black Butler, then, I think there's a pretty good chance that we'll get Eureka 7, but sometimes I get the feeling that the marketing department at Funimation probably isn't even aware of the fact that the show ran on YTV. So,
they must have some awareness. I would hope so. I don't know. Apparently that movie's not great, but I want to see it anyway.
It can't be worse than the first movie that came out. The first follow up, Good Night, Sleep Tight, Lovers, or whatever it was called. That was that movie is wretched. I hate it so much. I could go on and on about how much I hate that movie. It's awful. But yeah, I know Dai Sato was back for the new Eureka 7 movies, and I'm a big fan of the series, so I will definitely go see it. It is a little disappointing that apparently it's not a cohesive retelling and not something that a new viewer can jump into, which I think that Eureka 7 was ripe for that kind of compilation movie retelling. I think that could have worked really well, but I will check it out regardless. I'm curious to see how it is, and I hope they do release that here. It's a little troubling because I know that initially the press release was put out, I think by Bones directly, saying that the movie was going to get an international release, but they said it was going to get released in the United States specifically. And it's always frustrating because, especially in those press releases from Japanese companies, when they say United States, sometimes they mean North America. But when they say North America, sometimes they just mean the United States. So I guess we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, that's the life for Canada.
Yeah.
We have to make guesses that hopefully it means it's us.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's us.
Hopefully. All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps us up for today. Thanks for tuning into Zun and Canada. Randy, where can people find you on social media?
People can find me on Twitter. I am at whoisfriend on Twitter.
All right. And you can reach me on Twitter at jbetteridge or via email, zonandcanada@gmail.com. The theme song is by Ultraclystron, and that can be found on his album Packet Flood, which you can buy at ultraclystron.com. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play Music, or your podcast app of choice, and leave a rating or review if you have a chance. I would really appreciate that. If you know anyone who might like this show, please recommend it to them. See you again, and have a happy new year.